industrial hemp, and they wanted to perhaps bring in their expertise on the importance of the hemp seeds, nutraceutical hemp seeds, and nutraceutical hemp seed oil. So welcome everyone once again. And if Dr. Kinyuru is with us, kindly, you may join us and give us your presentation on the same. Welcome. Dr. Kinyuru, can you hear me?
In a minute.
Hello, Michael, can you hear me? Hello?
Hello, I can hear you.
Ah, good, thanks. Yes, Michael, you wanted to do something? Sorry, my earpiece wasn't getting you clearly.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, I made an introduction. I had informed the panelists and the members present that you are a food science expert at the Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology, and that you are also in the research and development department at the university, and that you have been having an interest together with the university on this industrial hemp, and that there are various uses that can be derived from the plant. And being an expert in the food science department, you may have more insight onto the uses and benefits of the nutraceutical seeds and the seed oil. So you can take it on from here.
Okay. Thank you very much, Michael. My name is John Kinyuru, and I'm the Director of Research at JKUAT. And thank you, Michael, for organizing this meeting. And I don't know whether you can see my screen from your end, Michael.
Yes, I can see.
Yeah, so yes, JKUAT is a university of research and innovations. We are based in Nairobi, Kenya, for those of us who may not be conversant. And JKUAT is really one of the leading institutions in this country and in this region. And one of our mandate is actually to conduct research in different fields and different areas of interest to society. And for a couple of months now, our interest has also grown into emerging issues. And one of them has been industrial hemp. Sometime last year, we held a very successful webinar on industrial uses and commercialization of hemp. And so we got a lot of interest. And being a university, we seek to give answers that can guide policy, that can guide decisions. We always talk of data-driven research. So we as a University of Research and Technology, we are very open to conducting research in this field of industrial hemp to see what are the potential, exploits that we can do with it commercially, and many other. And so I'm a food and nutrition scientist, and I've had interest in industrial hemp for some time now, which we hopefully want to see budding up or building up into many other things. So industrial hemp, probably Michael, I hope there's someone else who is going to talk about the difference between industrial hemp and marijuana. But just to set the stage, what you are seeing on my screen is a plant of an industrial hemp, is hemp rather, or industrial hemp. It's basically cannabis sativa, but it is a variety that has very low tetrahydrocannabinol. This is THC, which is a psychoactive component in marijuana or in cannabis. So hemp has less than 0.3% of THC, and that is not considered psychoactive. And so it can be exploited for industrial uses without necessarily being abused as a drug. So what you are seeing on my screen is a plant, is a hemp plant. And around it, you can see different parts and what has been derived, research that has gone into different parts of the plant, and actually what products have actually been produced from these plants. So starting from the flowers, we have seen as cosmetic products, oils, essential oils produced from it, and also pharmaceuticals like THC itself and CBD. CBD is cannabidiol, which has been produced from flowers and from leaves. The fiber, we have also seen fiber being produced from the stem and the leaves as well. And the fiber we are looking at here has been exploited in the paper industry, in the textile industry, in the, for making carpets and sweaters and shoes, etc. And when you look at the roots have also been exploited for phytoremediation and soil revitalization. So when hemp is planted in soils that have specific deficiencies and challenges, we have studies have actually shown that the soils have been remediated and the soils been revitalized. Yeah. Coming back to this other side, you can also see you can produce sheaves. Sheaves these are products, are fiber products. These are products from the stem, from the leaves as well. And we can see that they have been exploited for animal feeding. They have also been extracted for construction industry. And these are answers to some of our problems, challenges we are facing as a society, animal feed problems and construction, sustainable construction material challenges. And most importantly, and probably where I'll speak a little bit more, is now on the seed, the hemp seed. And we can see the seed has been exploited for food and feed. And it has been used as a dehulled or shelled seed, both for food and feed, food for humans and feed for animals. Oil has been extracted, and a lot of people have really studied this and published a lot of work on this. So I'll talk about this oil a little longer. And then there's the hemp seed meal. This is the product that remains after you extract your oil, akin to what we call cotton seed meal or sunflower cake. Yeah. So this oil has been studied, and a lot of interesting facts have been published out there. If you are able to look at this paper, which was published in 2020 by these guys, it's a review of the seed of industrial hemp, cannabis sativa, nutritional quality and potential functionality for human health and nutrition. So this paper actually looked at different aspects of this. So specifically, if I scroll down further to look at the composition, but probably before I go to composition, you're seeing these guys reported about 32 different cultivars of hemp that have been registered under the EU regulation 1307/2013. So all these are varieties of hemp that have been registered. And when you look at different compositions, nutrient compositions that have been reported by different researchers, these are all different papers, different researchers that have reported protein, fats and protein and carbohydrates, etc. You can see that fat from the seed ranges around from about 24 all the way to about 34% of oil from the seed. That is the hemp seed oil that I showed you above. The protein is also reported as ranging around from around 21 to around 25% of the seed is actually oil. Yeah, so you can see this is actually a seed that is competing very well with other oil seeds like the sunflower and other seeds that we use or that we produce for oil. And when you look at the composition of that oil, it's actually a very rich oil. It's a very rich and a very healthy oil. And this table here is also another summary of different fatty acids. Fat is made of what we call fatty acids. And you can see the polyunsaturated fats. These are what we call the long chain fatty acids, which are very good for your health. These are the omega-3 fatty acids, the omega-6 fatty acids that are good for human health and even animal health. And you can see different researchers have reported that of all the oil fatty acids that have been reported in this seed, very high percentage is actually polyunsaturated fats. So you're saying most of the oil in the hemp seed is actually omega-3s and omega-6 fats, which is actually very, very good for your health. And breaking it down further or going down further, you know, when we talk of omega-3 and omega-6, previously we've always talked about fish as a good source of omega-3 fats, and omega-3 fats are very good for brain development. Yeah, brain development, skin development, the development of the cell, body cell. And so when you talk of a food that has more polyunsaturated fats, you're actually saying this is a more healthier fat, which is associated with better body development, better brain cell development, and better health in terms of cardiac health, heart health. You realize that a lot of cardiovascular challenges are associated with oil, and especially what we call saturated fats, SFAs. Yeah, and you can see the saturated fatty acids in hemp seed is much, much lower compared to polyunsaturated fatty acids. It's just a small fraction of it. So it is actually a healthier oil for your body, for your brain, for your heart, etc. And most importantly, look at this ratio here. What I've highlighted here is omega-6 and omega-3 fatty acid ratio. What scientists or what science has actually proven now is that it's not just eating omega-3 fats, which is healthy, but what is more important is a balance between omega-3 and omega-6 fats in your diet. And science has recommended that the best ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 fats is the ratio ranging between 3 to 5. So 3 is to 1, 3 omega-6 units to 1, or to 5 omega-6 units to 1 unit of omega-3. And you can see from the various researches that I've reported that hemp seed oil, the ratio of omega-3 to omega-6 to omega-3 fatty acid ratio is actually falling within that range. So this is actually a very healthy diet as compared to other diets have omega-6 to omega-3 ratios of 10 plus. Yeah, so you'll find that having this oil in your diet is actually a more sustainable, more healthy option for your diet. So ladies and gentlemen, without taking so much time, I think this is an interesting area of study to focus on. And I think we as JKUAT and as a university will be able to really take on and head research in this regard, because we can't be able to do studies. Most of these studies that have been done and we are reporting on are done in countries that have legalized this. in Canada, in the US, and other European countries. So we are saying that as a university of research, we can actually head research to see what varieties of hemp can actually grow well within our agroecological zones. How can we manipulate them to produce the phytochemicals that are of interest to us or for commercial use? And how then can we exploit these phytochemicals in hemp to actually build our plant and animal health, among many other uses? So ladies and gentlemen, we'll be happy to collaborate with other interested partners to see what answers we can be able to give to our society in this regard. And so I think I want to stop there, Michael, so that I can give other people an opportunity to make their presentations and ask questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Dr. Kinyuru. I appreciate your insights. And once again, I welcome everybody else for the symposium. I am Michael Karanja. I'm the CEO of Green Corporation Global, a company which is focused on developing industrial hemp byproducts in the country. So for our next speaker, we are going to have
Michael, we lost your voice.
Thank you, Dr. Kinyuru. I don't know if you guys heard me, but let me thank you once again for the excellent presentation and insight you have given us on the nutritional benefits and value that can be found from the hemp seeds and the hemp seed oil. I am Michael Karanja. I'm the CEO of Green Corporation Global. Our company has a valid research license for industrial hemp. And basically what we're involved in is we want to spur the sector of industrial hemp by exploring the various possibilities using the existing infrastructure and find a way in which we can incorporate industrial hemp in each of those sectors. For our next speaker, we are going to have Nzambi, who is the founder of Gjenge company that deals in making of building materials and pavement blocks for roads and so forth. They make it from renewable waste materials, and they're looking at going into the affordable housing sector, and they want to explore the possibility of incorporating industrial hemp as a raw material to provide affordable housing to Kenyans. Welcome, Nzambi, to make your presentation.
Thank you so much, Michael. Apologies for the echo behind me. So yes, as Michael said, my name is Nzambi Matee, founder of Gjenge Makers Limited. Gjenge Makers is an alternative building product manufacturing company. In a nutshell, what we do is we convert plastic waste into building blocks, and that's our first product line. And we're making what in Kenya we call cabros. The next step, however, for us is making building blocks that we target, not just building blocks, but also different elements within the construction industry to help promote the affordable and sustainable building culture. Right now, as we speak, we are prototyping two things. First of all, what we call plastic lumber. The other one is building blocks. So, and in both sectors, we are looking to have the fiber itself to act as a resin, if I may say. So, for example, right now as we speak, just one moment. Can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Nzambi.
Okay, sorry. So yes, one of the things we're trying to see is, so our composite is made out of plastic waste and different components. For example, in the aggregate, it's either sand or ballast in some cases, and then in the lumber, it's either wood shaving. The block itself, depending on the product, the composite you're mixing, the melting point varies. Because remember, if you're making a building block, you need something that has very high temperature points. For example, the melting point is really high. Because for the case scenario, you put it in an area where you have, like for example, kitchen area where it is very prone to getting fires. You need to be able to withstand that temperature. Hence, bringing into the point the industrial hemp. Now, in this case, the sheaves and a bit of the fiber. Because from research we've realized is industrial hemp, especially when it's still moist before it gets dry, it has what we call, it's a bit flammable, redundant. And sorry. So yeah, it has very high inflammable properties, if I may call it that, and that is something that right now we're still in the research and development phase to see if we add the sheaves and the fibers within the composite, how will the final output of the block and also the lumber look like? Because remember, the element of the key element that we are looking for in the industrial hemp is the inflammable, quote unquote, property of it. Because I think if most of you remember the basic high school physics, impurities increase the melting point and they lower the boiling point. Now, in our composite, the different materials within the composite, they act as an impurity to each other. For example, plastic without sand melts at 125 degrees centigrade. Sand without plastic melts at about 1200 degrees centigrade. That is silica. But when you combine the two of them, the sand and the plastic, the melting point of the composite moves from 125, that's of the plastic, all the way to 450, depending on the ratio. When it comes to adding the wood shavings, we move that number to about 280, 300 degrees centigrade. And now the idea is when we add the sheaves of the industrial hemp, can we move this figure from 300 plus minus to maybe 600 or to maybe 800 degrees centigrade? Can the industrial hemp inflammable properties help facilitate that? If so, that's what we're trying to see. In addition to that is to help in terms of regulation of the blocks to breathe, because now the downside of using plastic The downside of this element is plastic is not porous in nature, and so therefore it does. So plastic itself is not porous in nature, and so therefore it doesn't breathe very well. And so once you bring this element of the industrial hemp using the sheaves, it provides air pockets, and these air pockets give room for air to breathe both in and out, and therefore we can be able to regulate the temperatures of the building. For example, if you make the building blocks that you're going to do. All this is still in the research and development phase, and so we'll not be able to say much until we fully conduct the research. But that's just something we're trying to look at. And our hope and prayer is once we get a breakthrough with this, then we're able to, just like in the plastic industry, work within also the industrial hemp industry to be the collector, rather the use of the byproduct. Because The first step of extracting the chemical components, that is the first step. And for us, because we need not only to make the block inflammable and able to breathe, but we also need to make it as economic sense. Therefore, we need to get these sheaves and these fibers at their last stage events. But these are still within the research at this point in time. But I think the inflammable, my open prayer is to why use, sorry for that, but why use industrial hemp and not any other fiber? For us, it's in terms of element to see the possibilities. So with that said and done, I'd love to end my talk there. I know, as I said, at this moment, it's just an R&D, and we're looking forward, hopefully we can partner with JPOT as a JPOT alumni. That would be really awesome to be able to see how we can be able to facilitate that, because the element you are coming with in terms of research for us is more from the business and the economic side of things. And so once we get the science done too, then you can be able to see, okay, which type of product we can roll out that can make both a sustainable and economic sense. So thank you very much, and I'll rest my talk there. Michael, I don't know if you're still there. You can take it from there.
The speaker, right? Hello, sorry guys about that. We are having a bit of technical issues with our Zoom account, but we have been able to sort that out. Thank you so much, Nzambi, for your insights on how the industrial hemp components of the sheaves can be utilized for affordable housing and other building uses that are currently being put in use in construction. If you may allow me to proceed to our next speaker. I don't know if we have a representative from Malawi with us, perhaps Jensco. I can see Inigo is in the meeting. Kindly
Hello, Michael.
make your presentation to us.
Hello, Michael. Sorry, give me a minute. Let me see. Hi, everyone. So my name is Kinyuru. I will be representing and speaking on behalf of Gjenge Africa and Invegro. Invegro is a company, well, both Invegro and Gjenge are companies based in Malawi, like Michael addressed. Invegro started the regulatory lobbying in about 2015, and as from Hempolution, that is the Spanish company, joined the research trials in 2017. And we started since then working on breeding and domesticating different varieties for this climate and latitude that we have here in Malawi and neighboring countries. So to start with, perhaps I will start with the regulatory challenges that we faced during the first 3 years that we spent here in Malawi, or even 5 years for Invegro. Most of the challenges were into justifying and demonstrating the difference between industrial hemp and medicinal cannabis, which is a topic that I think has already been discussed in here. To put it in a short way for everybody to understand, I'm sure that most of the people here already have an understanding about this. The main basic difference between the industrial hemp varieties and medicinal cannabis varieties is the THC, or tetrahydrocannabinol content. THC and the THC cannabidiol group, which is about 5 or different cannabinoids, are considered to be psychoactive, have been proven to be psychoactive besides their medicinal effects. And because of that, they were considered, let's say, a dangerous component of the plant. And because of that, the plant was at some point categorized and has been, well, chased as a drug across different countries. With that said, the industrial hemp varieties and the medicinal cannabis varieties, they look perfectly the same to the eye. There is not a sure way to differentiate neither of the plants with the eye. To get confirmation, we will have to take a sample of the female flower and test it in a lab with either an HPLC or a GC, which are equipment to test different chemical components of plants. And with that, we could see the THC content in a plant, and depending on the country, we will have a limit into this THC content or proportion into the plant to be considered industrial hemp or medicinal cannabis. So one of the main, let's say, challenges was this one, and it still is. In some of the countries, we are seeing THC limitations of 0.3, 0.2, 0.6, or even up to 1% for a variety to be considered industrial hemp or medicinal cannabis. In Malawi, we got the government to understand that due to the climate conditions that we have here in Malawi, and due to the previous experiences of many other countries, 0.3 limitation wasn't very realistic, as most of the crops that we have trialed from, let's say, Europe or even other countries in Asia or South America will mostly always surpass the 0.3 limitation. And due to this, sorry, I think I was silenced in there. And I was saying this THC limitation has become, because of that, also one of the main challenges for the industry development when we talk about breeding. That is mainly Genge's activity. So at this stage, to give you an overview of our situation in Malawi, In 2020, Malawi decriminalized or legalized the crop by forming a cannabis regulatory authority that is represented by one person of each of the ministers here in the country. So we have a representative of the Ministry of Health, a representative of the Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Trade, Finance, etc. And I will say this has been one step that is differentiating Malawi into other countries, in Africa especially, when developing an industry. It's one of the problems that we are seeing when looking at South Africa, for example. What has delayed the industry so far is been, for example, the discussion about who has to regulate industrial hemp, who has to regulate medicinal cannabis, and who should be in charge of the licensing. So in Malawi, all of that now is falling under the CRA. And the CRA is also the one that is in mandate of setting the fees for the different licenses. As I was saying, at this stage, GenScore, we are mainly working on the breeding side and genetic development of the plant. At this stage, we have proven the commercial potential of 4 varieties, and we have proven that these varieties produce THC content of less than 1% in the plant, and therefore categorize them as industrial hemp. We'll come later into that. And now we are working for the past year or 2 years. We have been working more also on the THC spectrum since the CRA gave us the go-ahead. So at the moment we are working with studying and cross-pollinating different varieties from Malawi, neighboring countries, and also countries in the same latitudes in Asia and South America. Perhaps to address a bit the agronomical and breeding also situation of the plant. Cannabis, it's a photo-dependent variety, meaning it depends on the amount of daylight that it has. And that's how we mostly can differentiate the varieties when we look at them agronomically. This stage, there is 3 categories when talking about photodependency. This will be indicas, sativas, and ruderalis. In the current latitudes that we're in Malawi, Zimbabwe, even Mozambique, we should be looking at sativa varieties. And the reason for this is due to the location that we have with the equator, our our daylight across the year is pretty much within the 11 and 14 hours per day. And indica varieties require at least 16 hours per day to be on vegetative stage. That's why when most of us will say we have trialed European varieties that are indica dominant varieties, in our latitudes, they have grown, let's say, short. They started flowering about 1 month after sowing, and the yields are not as high as expected, or perhaps as high as, let's say, promoted or advertised in Europe. Because of that, most of our breeding and research is into stabilizing or domesticating varieties to our latitudes so that they can be grown outdoors without supplemental lighting and give, let's say, profitable yields. That is the main starting point of research. And then we go into the separating of the chemiotypes, to put it some way, or we go into the separating of the phenotypes that are producing a high THC content or a high CBD content. And then the following steps are into stabilizing that chemotype with the previous characteristics that we have been selecting before, right? So obviously the breeding side of it, as in with any other crop, it's a long process with traditional breeding. unless we start using technology like the one that we are seeing now with molecular breeding, right? Where we can start identifying some of the genes that are responsible for THC production or CBD production, and start selecting those characteristics from different individual plants since a very early stage, right? To continue, perhaps talking a bit about the regulatory challenges, one of the main challenges as well that we have been facing here in Malawi is related to this same issue, is the laboratory or analytical capabilities in the country, right? For Malawi to have, or anyone to have a market, we're going to have to prove the quality of our product. And for that, we are going to need to test our product, whether it's the flower for cannabinoid content or whether it's the seed for oil content or omega content, like they were explaining before. We're going to need these capabilities in country to be able to show to potential markets of export that our product is of quality. Even if we want to develop the market regionally or locally, we're going to have to be able to have a quality assurance and to be able to differentiate, like we have said, medicinal cannabis or industrial hemp, where we're going to have to be able to be doing regular testing in these producers or in the products before they go into the market. So all of this is capability that has to be built. And for that, for example, we have been relying on European and South African partners. It's an ongoing training. Again, it's a long process. And even after that, we need to look for being accredited. Again, if we want to look for the international markets. So perhaps those will be the main points that I would like to highlight into the challenges that we can have in an early industry. To talk about the potential opportunities, as they have been mentioning before, we as Invegro and Gjenge have also identified the construction and the food applications of the plant as main opportunities to start tackling in the country because of the high benefits that it can have in the country, and because of perhaps the difficulties to start working on. The following applications that we would like to start looking at, for example, are the biocomposites or bioplastics. But as we have seen so far, these are going to require still a bit more of research and development. Even in the Eastern countries, even in Europe or in America, they are still pretty much on the research on this side of the industry. So at this stage, we have identified once again the construction by hempcrete or by hemp insulation panels as one viable avenue to start looking at in the country. And the other one, like I said, will be the nutritional aspect. So at this stage, we already have done a couple of trials into the hempcrete and the hemp panels. We built our offices out of it, and we starting to look now into building storage rooms and small buildings in the neighboring communities that we have to show the potential and to raise awareness. The other point will be the nutrition, like I mentioned. So due to the current situation that we are seeing also in Europe with the war between Ukraine and Russia, we already seen that there is going to be a shortage of hemp seed and hemp seed oil in Europe, and that's also going to mean an opportunity, perhaps even for the export of the value-added product of the hemp seed oil, and then still remaining with that secondary product of the hemp seed cake, for example, for the animal feeding, like they were mentioning before, right? So maybe just to finish off, I would like to perhaps show quickly the catalog and some of the varieties that we have registered so far in the country, just so that we can also visually see the differences between them. We can see the difference in yields and what can that mean, and the difference also in the sowing density, right? Let me see if I can share my screen. Okay, so let's see. Sorry. Okay. There we go. So as we have explained, there is no real difference between the varieties between industrial hemp or medicinal cannabis. This meaning that we can always extract or we can always get the herd, the fiber, the biomass, and the grain as product from the crop. Doesn't matter if it's a high THC content crop or a low THC content. The only aspect that can be, let's say, conditional to how we plant it will be the grain, as we will only get seeds when we also have males around, right? Another way of classification that I haven't mentioned before on cannabis varieties could be if they are monoecious or dioecious. So as an understanding, we can have both male and female flowers in the same plant, or we can have them in separate plants. So one of the varieties that we have registered here in Malawi for the industrial production is Futura 75. Futura 75, it's a variety coming from Europe, but that we have seen that when planting in high density, let's say 40 kgs per hectare, it can still give some profitable yields, especially in grain and fiber. So Futura 75 was registered as a biomass variety in Europe, but due to how it grows in here, we can see other applications. Because it's once again an indica dominant variety, whether we plant it in August, like it's mentioned here, or whether we plant it in January, the complete cycle of the variety, it's never going to be more than 4 months. And because of that, we are also looking at Futura used as a rotational crop, right? Because hemp, as they have mentioned before, it also has other properties as phytoremediant, right? Some studies showed increasing yields in tomato crops, for example, of up to 40% when hemp was planted as a rotational crop. Another variety that we have registered is Jomo. Jomo is a variety that was coming from Asia. We did a bit of a stabilization or domestication on it because it was coming. We could see quite off types from the seed that we were getting from China. So what we did was we tried to stabilize it into 1 or 2 different phenotypes. Now the Jomo, because where it's coming from, once again, because of the latitude, is considered as a sativa dominant variety, and that's what we have seen when growing it in Malawi, meaning that the complete cycle of it, or the growth of it, is much longer. Sorry, it requires a much shorter daylight period to stay on vegetative stage. And when sown, for example, on December, we'll see that the harvest time will be between May, June, or sometimes between, depending on the year, even July. The yields of the Jomo variety obviously are much higher when talking per plant than with the Futura. but the yields per meter square or per year are gonna depend on our sowing density, on our amount of cycles per year. So really, we could produce the same amount of product with the Futura if we grew 2 cycles, for example, which we could do. And well, just to give perhaps another, let's say, view on the agronomical side of it, and what we have seen in Malawi, is that we can always take advantage of the rainy season for the initial stages of the plant, and especially when the whole vegetative period. But when facing the flowering stage of the plant, any heavy irrigation, any heavy rain, are gonna result in heavy crop loss. So we don't recommend the growing or the factoring of the flowering period during the rainy seasons, right? But we always recommend to use the rainy seasons as the natural irrigation, and that will be sufficient for the whole crop cycle. And then perhaps just to show quickly on CBD genetics, at this stage, we have raised there CBD Passion, that is a variety that we initially brought from Europe as well. It's also an indica dominant variety, so when grown by seed and without supplemental lighting, it's going to have a very short cycle of 3 to 4 months, the same as Futura. The THC content is going to be under 1%, between 0.4 and 0.6, and the CBD content will go as high as 14%. Sometimes we have seen it 16% when grown by seed. And yeah, I think that I will leave the panel for the following speaker with this. Unless there is any questions that somebody would like myself to address.
Thank you. Maybe as we wait for Michael to come back, maybe a quick one concerning the Malawi legal space. The legalization by Malawi, does it have limitations in terms of maybe acreage? Do you have a maximum acreage or minimum acreage, or what is number 2? Is the legalization cutting across even the high THC varieties, or is it only just for low THC? Thank you.
Yeah, so at this stage, Malawi has per se the doors open for anything. So it has about 10 to 14 different licenses that you can apply for. You have industrial hemp cultivation, as well as medicinal cannabis cultivation, processing, export, distribution. So at this stage, like I said, the industrial hemp is considered any variety that is under 1%. And anything above 1% will be considered medicinal cannabis, but you can always apply for a license. The fees obviously are quite different. The medicinal cannabis fees are higher than the industrial hemp ones. And then when talking about minimum or maximum acreage, there is a minimum acreage of 4 acres to get a license, and there is not a maximum amount. Besides the fees, there is an export and import fees of 0.5%. And what is also obviously required to obtain any license is to fill up some forms that are basically asking about different steps of the business plan, or are asking to obviously explain how do you have the knowledge to get into this industry and to develop a company? If you have the financial means, how did you get them? A bit about the security plan that you are going to put in place, the geological position or GPS coordinates, police clearance from the directors, and then also details about the buyers if you are applying for a medicinal cannabis one, right?
Okay. Thank you. And I think there's a question on the chat by TNM. Any scope on R&D and its regulatory differences in terms of licensing and government support? Does the government or licensing body support such endeavors? So you say there's a regulatory body now. Does it give any funding, any support, or what kind of support for R&D?
Yeah, so no, not really. The regulatory authority really stays on the regulatory section of it, and it's not really supporting anyhow into financing or anything like that. Also, obviously, there is various institutions in the country that that we can apply for grants or financing for, but not the regulatory authority. Then, in terms of really the breeding and the research authority, let's call it the research supervisors, it's either not the CRA, but it's still the DARS, that is the Department of Agricultural Research and Services, that will be kind of working with us for the supervision of these trials, of the breeding, and etc. And then obviously there is also the seed services unit, that is the one in charge of certifying our seed per se. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. Michael, maybe if you take it over. I think Michael is having challenges.
Thank you so much for
Are you
that,
there, Michael?
Inigo. I appreciate the efforts you've made in terms of explaining the agronomical aspect of the industrial hemp. For now, I don't know if anybody in the panel has any question for the previous speakers, apart from Inigo. Dr. Kinyuru presented about the nutraceutical seeds and the seed oil, and Nzambi spoke about the affordable housing. If there is no question, I'd like to inform you guys that the meeting may be ending in about 10 minutes. So when it's about to end, I'll request the current speaker to permit us to be able to reconnect the meeting again so that everybody can be able to join back in with the same link. So for now, the next speaker is going to be Witold. He's from the Polish Hemp Program, a government institution in Poland that is...
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I'm afraid that we lost Michael, but I think that I can start.
Yeah, please proceed.
Okay, so good afternoon to the organizer, to the speakers, to the participants. First of all, I would like to thank for inviting me to this symposium. I'm really excited about taking part in developing industrial hemp sector in Kenya. My name is Witold Czeszak. I have a couple of functions. The most important when it comes to hemp is that I'm a co-founder and head of Polish Hemp Program. It's an initiative led by Institute of Natural Fibers and Medicinal Plants. That's a scientific governmental institute. People say that it's one of the oldest hemp institute worldwide. So my other function is I'm a head of technology transfer department, and I'm also co-founder and broker, let's say technology broker in SPV special purpose venture, which is called Plantinova, which is owned in 100% by Institute. So I believe that you would like to hear more about industrial hemp than other activities of the Institute. So let's focus on that. Polish Hemp Program was established in 2018 because Institute has like 90 years experience in industrial hemp and flax also, but let's focus on industrial hemp. Institute has been doing R&Ds and significant commercialization lately. So when hemp became popular again, meaning like 2010, a lot of big players worldwide, they were looking for potential related to industrial hemp. And I would say that these groups were mainly from US, and one of such group visited us in 2017, as far as I remember. And since that meeting, we have started to be strategic partners. So that was the beginning of Polish Hemp program. Since that moment, when we signed the biggest industrial hemp export agreement, we had to organize a special, let's say, department, which is called Polish Hemp program, and I built it from the scratch. Right now, we have the biggest number of plantations in Poland. We produce, our core business is producing industrial hemp sowing seed material. So we have divided Poland in regions. Each region has his supervisor. We have people responsible for sales in Poland, export sales. So since we established a Polish Hemp program, right now we are present with our sowing seed material worldwide. In North America, in South America, in South Africa, which might be interesting for you, in Australia and in Europe, of course. So we can say that 90% of our production we export. And as I mentioned, we are focusing on sowing seed material as our core business. We have couple varieties. They are all tailor-made. So one is for grain, one is for fiber, one is for biomass, and the fourth one, because we have 4 of them right now on the market, the fourth one is for, let's say, for herbs. All of them are below 0.2 THC, because that's how it is in Europe. Right now, to be honest, we have 0.3, but it's still, we are still in the maximum. So there is no problem to grow our varieties when it comes to THC level. For example, in US, where, by the way, our varieties are grown in 41 states right now. Our varieties were tested in CDA, it's Colorado Department of Agriculture, and all of them pass exam perfectly, all was below 0.2 THC. So our star variety, which is called Henola, it's pretty new one. It can give like 2.5 ton of grain from conventional agriculture and 1.7 from ecological. So I'm convinced that that's huge numbers, and that's, I would say, the answer for the global situation right now. Because I also would like to tell you maybe later about the global market, the industrial hemp market, from my perspective. But getting back to this variety, Henola, it has a huge yield, which is good for the situation which we have right now in Europe, because the main driver for the sector is definitely grain. There are a lot of interest. Companies trying to buy big amounts of grain for production, of course, the hulled seed, but that's not the point. The hemp oil, but it's still not the one. The point is to produce proteins. That's the main driver of the sector in Europe when it comes to food industry. And from my perspective, because we are also an R&D institution, there is still a lot of to do to upscaling production, protein production made from industrial hemp, because right now you can freely buy on the market something with content of protein like 50–60%, but my goal is to have 90%. I've heard about 70% content, but it's still not the goal. And I believe, according to our R&D projects and other projects which are running in Europe, mainly in Poland, that we will reach this goal soon. So getting back to Polish Hemp Program, as I mentioned, our core business is sowing seed production. But since 2020, I've been focusing on creating the whole value chains, because I'm receiving a lot of inquiries from different parts of the world for seed, I mean sowing seed. But to succeed, it's not just to have sowing seed material, there should be an offtake. And even if you have offtake and sowing seed materials, there's still a niche between. So you need to have processing lines to produce what customer needs. So my point is that we've been focusing on that. Maybe not, you can see it here, just a second. Can you see what I'm having in my hands?
Yeah.
Okay. So here are sheaves. I don't want to open it. Most of you knows how it looks like. So that's the process, because we also own the facility, the biggest one in Poland, where we process straw. So that's very important, especially right now, because we are focusing there in this facility for fiber production, for technical fiber and fiber for textiles. So in this facility, we can produce uncleaned fiber, which goes to technical purposes. I will show you later what kind of purposes. Clean fiber, which is the base or raw material for production yarn. And for example, that's very interesting. We have unique technology how to produce twine made from hemp fiber. Of course, we do also blends with flax, for example. We also produce disinfection mats. That's the product made from hemp fiber, flax fiber, and jute. It depends on the customer. With the blend is different. It has been using for let's say disinfection processes in farms. It's totally biodegradable, so you can use it instead of plastic mats. Yeah, so it's very interesting product, especially that in Europe. I'm not good how the situation is in Africa, but in Europe everything must be green. Everything, all authorities, all strategies which comes from Brussels for European Union says that we should go green. So that's a very good alternative for when it comes to other plastic mats. We also use it for pets, for small pets which you have at home as a base. Yeah, and here it's the, let's say, cherry on the pie. That's fabrics made from hemp, 100%. You probably know that on the market there are some products when it comes to textile, but we have the best, I would say, in Poland, laboratory, certified laboratory. So we know that most of the products, maybe it's not a good word, but it's fake, because the ratio hemp to other fibers, it's not the same as is mentioned on the label. So other products, maybe it's okay. It's made by us. I showed you the twine. The other products which can be made, we don't do it here, but as I told you, and I believe that was the intention of MICHA'EL, to show you the global products which are made in US, in Kentucky. my friend company Hempwood, he produced it as a pressed from the whole straw, not from the herds. So that's Hempwood. That's what I'm holding right now. And here's flooring made from hempwood. That's the upper side. The rest is made from regular wood, but that's very interesting and very promising product in my opinion. Here, okay, I show you such leaflet. Maybe it will be visible. So we produce. I told you about sowing seed material, but we also, because of the need, we produce grain for food industry. We produce oil. We produce dehulled seed. We produce also essential oils, which is very interesting product because it has a lot of terpenes. And right now, a lot of stakeholders of the business, they are focusing on terpenes. And we know how to produce it, and we produce it. So what next? I have, as I told you, worldwide network, I would say. I have my distributors and licensee in many countries right now. So last week, I've been to Sweden. We took part in the biggest agriculture expo in Scandinavia. It was the very important momentum for hemp because it was first time when on this event was industrial hemp booth, let's say. We had it with our partners from Sweden. We sell, that's just the beginning. The sector is at the premature stage, I would say. So we sell there our sowing seed material, but we also do other things. And for example, let me show you what our partners from Sweden produce. That's insulation with all certificates, because I have to mention, probably some of the speakers, previous speakers mentioned about materials for construction sector, but even if some things are easy to do, for example, hempcrete, there is a problem which I see, and I always say to the producers, that you have to certify your products because it must be done. It's obligation, in my opinion. And unfortunately, in Poland, for example, we have couple producers, for example, bricks made from hempcrete, and they don't have certificates. So, in my opinion, it's a problem. It might be problem because it's in regular construction, let's say materials, you have certificates for flammability, things like that. So that's my advice or suggestion to your partners, to your producers. I showed you the insulation. It was inside the insulation, and here it's totally different thing. That's still insulation, but outside. That's very nice product. So I'm trying to show you how many things not can be done, are being done. Yeah. So that's the difference between some people who show products on you know, website. That they are real. They are real. Of course, we don't produce everything in Poland, but so far, I believe that we are a global society. The pie is so huge that we cannot, that's my opinion, cannot compete. We should make a synergy effect for all of us. So that's why we have to help each other, because again, pie is really big right now. So there will be time for competition. And the next thing is also made from hemp, pellets. I mentioned you about briquettes and pellets. To be honest, for me, such type of product is not the best way how to utilize straw, because you just burn it. So I prefer something more significant, like using for textile, for even construction. But right now, I don't know if you have the same problems or issues because of the global situation, which were caused by Ukraine war. The prices of energy went up, gas, petrol, everything. And coal, which we, to be honest, are producer, we have coal mining in Poland. is so expensive that it's very competitive to produce pellets from hemp and use it as a heat source. It's more or less the same as coal. We have some studies about that. I can, of course, share with you such information if somebody would like to know that. But that's a, short-term momentum, I would say. And investing in the big facilities for this purpose, I don't think it's economical efficient, because in my opinion, it will be normal soon. Maybe it's not a good word, but probably in 1 year. So that's a business for a couple months. That's my opinion, yeah, because that's abnormal what's happening right now. Yeah, we have the same situation, for example, with farmers. Since we've started Polish Hemp program, we had a lot of interest from farmers. They were waiting, let's say, in queue to be part of our project, because we multiply the seed with our farmers. Even that we have 1,700 hectares, the agronomy and let's say technology of production sowing seed material, because of we have monoecious varieties, needs to have small plots like 5 hectares, which is extremely good alternative for other plants for our farmers. They are extremely happy to earn a lot of money. But this year is totally crazy, because other crops went up. I mean, the pricing. So it was difficult to keep them in the number which we expected to have. But finally we succeed. So we are still with them, or they are still with us. But it is a problem. It will, as I understand the situation, or I hope that next season it will be better. So now a quick overview of the global situation. I've been to many countries lately to talk with my partners, with my licensee. Because our business model is based on a couple elements. First, we are looking for new customers, then for distributor, and the end we have licensee. So we multiply our sowing seed material locally. It's better from different aspects. First, cost of transportation. Second, there are countries like Australia or even states right now where farmers prefer to buy local sowing seed material. So that's why multiplying our varieties locally is better from the even marketing point of view, I would say. But getting back to the global overview, for sure the sector is growing, but it's not the same as we had with CBD. We don't have such spectacular, let's say, growth right now, but we still have players which think about the sector in long-term perspective. That's how I see the sector. That's how institutes see the sector. So I believe that that's only one right strategy to have long-term perspective, because it needs time to create or to invent some processing lines. Still, there is we need time to inform people how to use the plant, how to grow it, how to eat things made from hemp, how to wear clothes, etc., etc. So there is a huge work still to do. And when it comes to global markets, I see difference between continents. In Europe, as I mentioned, as I told you, we have the main driver is grain and food industry. That's for sure. In US, we have totally different situation. They are not open for having superfoods made from hemp in a scale which I expected. So right now they are focusing mainly on biomass, on straw. There were launched a lot of startups, and there will be, I believe, this season or maybe next season, a lot of facilities which will be responsible for processing straw for composites, for hairs. That's the easiest one. and maybe textiles, but textile, in my opinion, is the most difficult area to achieve because there is a huge technology barrier. Textile meaning production of fabrics made from high quality long hemp fiber. That's the goal. That's the goal. We can cottonize hemp as well, hemp fibers. It's easier, but still need to have a couple elements in this process. So getting back to US, that's their strategy, their goal, their direction, which is good in my opinion. Of course, I should mention about horse bedding, because it might be even funny for some people, but right now the biggest interest for her is not from construction business, not from composites, but from horse bedding. I mean, from this horse sector, let's say, for horse bedding. We can sell all what we have right now. That's how it's good taken, I would say, for horse this product, which is good, but still my goal is to process it more, not just obtain herd and sell it to as a horse bedding, but to process it for composites and things like that. We are involved in a couple projects like this, and I know that next year or years will be more focusing on straw for sure. So what else? 2 points on my list. First, input to Kenya. As I mentioned before, we are more than open to help the industrial hemp sector in Kenya in all, let's say, aspects. We can supply with our genetics, but remember that hemp is a plant, so we are not sure if in this part of the world, meaning latitude, our varieties will perform the same as in Poland. For example, in Poland, our one of our variety, which is dedicated for fiber, can grow like 5-6 meter high, and I don't know how it will be in Kenya, because what was mentioned by a previous speaker, we are talking here about photoperiods, so it might be a problem. But still, if we want to be present in new territory, we start from small trials just to check if it's worth to develop our let's say presence with our varieties there. And I suggest to do the same with Kenya. For sure, we can invite you to Poland to show you how it works here in this in our country, which is, I would say, important place in the worldwide industrial hemp map. We can help you with machines. Of course, we don't own all of them, but even if we don't have such machine, we can advise you which machine might be the best choice for your scale and your capability, etc., etc. So there are a lot of things to implement, which we can help you with. We have also end products like cosmetics. Probably I forgot to mention about that. We have creams, lots of things. I can share with this information with you without any problems. So at the end, one thing which is on my table right now, but it's promising but still unknown even in Europe, it's carbon credits. Probably all of you know that hemp can absorb between 12 to even 20 tons of CO2 per hectare. So it's very interesting aspect of this plant when it comes to credit carbons and market of credit carbons. But in Europe, it's a premature phase of this. There are a couple players who paying farmers, for example, 30 euro per hectare, but it's very complicated, unknown, unregulated. We will see what will happen, but for sure it might be additional value for farmers even this 30 euro per hectare, it will look good in the Excel. Yeah. So more or less, I think that's it. If you have any questions, just let me know. You can contact me directly. Michael has my email, my phone number, everything. So again, we are open to help Kenya, and I'm more than happy to see that you have organization like this and you have meetings, because people are the most important factor to succeed. There are some countries, unfortunately, there is one, for example, Australia. They have a lot of groups, a lot of chambers, a lot of consortiums, and they don't talk with each other, and it's a huge problem when it comes to developing the sector. So I suggest or recommend to be strong, to strengthen the potential of your players from the universities, from business, from government, because it's also important to have behind you governmental support, and that's my recommendation. So all the best, and thank you for being with me.
Hey, Witold, I don't think anybody read you my question. Yeah, I'm Serone. I come from Kenya.
A question for you from Synonym CBD Industries.
I see right now.
He is asking if you have
reading it,
specification for the hemp seed protein. He is looking at hemp protein for use as pet food application. If you may have any specifications for that.
Okay, so please contact me directly. For sure, I will help you, because we have specification and we have producers, so we can talk about that together.
Thanks, Witold. I'll just email you. What did you say was the email again, if you don't mind?
It's not a problem, but okay. Let me put it.
Just reply to me directly.
Yeah. Just a second.
Yeah. Thank you.
Just a second. Okay, you should have it. All of you, probably. It went to everybody, right? So yeah, if you have any questions or things to discuss, just let me know. I'm open for discussion.
And another question, Witold, if you may permit me. I had ever read in a hemp magazine about 2 years ago. I wanted you to clarify for the local hemp farmer in Poland, what's the potential returns that the average farmer can be able to get, say per hectare or per acre, in terms of, I don't know if you look at it, if it's one season or if it's the whole year. What's the potential return for the average farmer in Poland?
Okay, that's a good question, but unfortunately in this season it has changed because of the crazy situation with pricing. But in general, we have contracts with our farmers which are based on producing sowing seed material. That's our main activity, but farmers can also produce a grain. So let's focus on production sowing seed material. So last year we paid to a farmer per hectare. It was like in US dollars, let's say, just a second, like $4,500. It was income, not profit, because with the profit it's difficult to analyze it, because they are mostly small farmers. So most of them do all of labor by themselves. So they don't hire anybody else. But if you hire a company or some other people, the costs are higher. So in my understanding, let's say that 30% of this sum, which I mentioned you about, should be a profit, yeah? But in this season, we had to change the pricing. So right now we will be paying like, let me calculate it, like $6,000 per hectare. But I'm talking about 1 ton of high quality sowing seed material and with the highest quality, because in our agreements, we have different pricing, which differs from the quality, like germination and purity. That's extremely important for us. So we have couple levels, let's say, but the highest one would be, as I said, $6,000 per hectare, yeah? Maybe 5,500. I can't hear you. Oh.
Understood by everyone in the attendance. For now, we'll proceed to the next speaker, who is Professor Mboru. If you listened to the presentation, or rather saw the presentation by Mr. Witold from Poland, you'll notice he showed, or rather demonstrated, a bit of hemp wood or wood products that have been made from industrial hemp. So our next speaker is a wood scientist and is a professor in one of the leading institutions of higher learning in our country. And he will take us through the hemp wood, or rather the potential of industrial hemp being used as a wood substitute in our country. Welcome, Professor.
Thank you, Michael. Good afternoon, everyone. Go to page 6. Colleagues, most of the issues have been touched, and so I have requested that we move away from the introduction. You will excuse me because I'm on the road. I've pulled out of the road very briefly. I like the presentations by all the 4 or 5 presenters, starting with John, then Nzambi, then Inigo, who talked much about Malawi, then Professor Witton Zesak. If I pronounce your name not properly, you excuse me. Colleagues, I would say Kenya is fiber deficient, especially for pulp and paper production. And if you look at the page 6 of my presentation, hemp can give us a solution, especially for consumer tires, industrial tires, paper, building materials, as has been mentioned by almost all the speakers, and then nutritional food supplements. So in that, my real interest on hemp is about many products that we can get from hemp. Basically, Kenya has been importing virgin pulp, because as at now we have a logging ban from all government forests, and the importation has, of course, consequences because of the cost. So I like what the last speaker, Professor Witton, has said, that they can assist Kenya to come up with a program that can assist us supply consistent supply of fibers, especially for paper products, textiles, and of course these food supplements, and of course other industrial products. So move to the next slide, Michael. we have seen that hemp can give us food, can give us supplements, textile, and all those products. And as I said, we are deficient of fiber in Kenya. Pan-African paper mills in Kenya was the main virgin pulp producer. But due to many factors therein, the forest cover in Kenya dropped to almost 2%, and the government effected the logging ban. Of course, many people lost jobs. Many products were not available in the market, and we had to resort to importing such products. So when I hear anything that can supplement fiber or biomass for production of such important products for household use, I'm really excited, because that's a plus. And of course, in terms of earning for the country, it would be a big plus. Move to the next slide, Michael. That I say, of course, hemp, if we manage to grow it in Kenya, we'll get all the seeds, the fiber, the flour, and all the biofuels that we need, compact and make briquettes and other wet material. So it will be a broad spectrum thing which can change the economy of a country. So when Professor has said that we have such programs that can bring about hemp production in Kenya, for example, he has mentioned of the potential of both production, different densities, and of course, I go by his mention that most of these products must be registered by organizations that validate quality of such products. So my interest would be in the research that we'll be doing in Kenya. We check on the products and then validation for construction, for example, construction market, for the market even out there, because we are not limited to just producing for Kenya. We'll be producers of many products which will be consumed in the region. I would say East African region will be a big producer of these hemp products. Go to the next one, Michael.
No, Professor, if you may just permit us, we have about 2.5 minutes left for the meeting to end. If we may
okay, then I'll just jump to my conclusion.
Able to relaunch it so that everybody else can rejoin using the same link. After you, we are going to have 2 more speakers, and then we'll come to a close of the symposium. So kindly allow us to end the meeting to allow everybody to rejoin back for purposes of managing the time. Thank you.
Okay, I stop. Okay. Michael, can you hear me? Michael, go to slide number 11, where I have environmental impacts and our case study is the paper industry. Slide number 11. Michael, take us to slide number 11.
Okay, Professor, we can
go to slide number 11, Michael.
And you can continue presenting from there.
Yes, go to slide number 11. colleagues have said that we are fiber buyers from different countries. And a case study of my research is the paper industry, where we have the deforestation and the world's decreasing supply of wood resources are a major ecological concern. From hemp, we can get 3 to 4 times more usable fiber per hectare as compared to the wood. Number 2, hemp grows very fast. Go to slide number 11. Hemp grows very fast, and it takes less than 6 months for the stalks to reach maturity, where a tree can take up to 20 years. So in this case, not only that hemp can grow faster, but it contains higher level of cellulose, which we require for paper making. This means quick return for our money, and of course, preserving biodiversity. The next advantage of this is that hemp paper does not require use of toxic bleaching chemicals, and we can only use hydrogen peroxide for bleaching hemp pulp. So this one is an added advantage when it comes to environmental conservation. Another advantage of hemp paper can be recycled up to 8 times as compared to 3 times the paper which we get from wood. And of course, hemp pulp of hemp products resist decomposition, or what we refer to as yellowing of the paper products. And therefore, in my conclusion, colleagues, I would say hemp would provide unique agricultural, recreational, medicinal, and industrial products for our societies. Number 2, with environmental concerns, world continuing to be a growing concern, implementing sustainable practices across international industries, we must recognize the necessary steps which we must take as nations. And we do that by shifting from long-standing methods of operation to new methods and upcoming science-based solving that can assist us in solving methods of our problems. The next point on my conclusion, the industrial hemp requires recognition, and feasibility studies must be done. As we have said that, Wilton has said that Pollard can assist us to get there. Instead of starting from scratch, we can get a case study by even visiting and seeing what they are doing in their country. And lastly, I would say industrial hemp is a potential in changing our Kenyan economy. I thank you so much, colleagues. I'm sorry that I've been very fast because I'm on the way to my job. I've just pulled out of the road. I thank you so much. Michael. Michael, I'm through. Maybe a concern or a question, I can take it.
Thank you so much for your presentation, Professor Mburu. There is somebody who has requested a soft copy of the presentation to be sent. I will personally undertake to send the same to those who are interested. Just drop your emails and I will forward the presentation. We have looked at the use of industrial hemp as a possible substitute for wood products to be able to conserve our forests and to be able to stop the current deforestation that is rampant in our country. For our next speaker, we are left with 2 speakers. I'd like to go to Dr. Karl Mateel, who is with the Advanced Biomass Research Institute, Advanced Botanical and Biomass Research Institute He has undertaken research for close to 10 years in industrial hemp, and I believe his insight will be of great use to those who are in attendance with us. Welcome, Dr. Karl.
Thank you very much, Michael, and thank you everyone for the chance and opportunity to speak today. Oh, bit of a reverb there. Okay, I have a presentation. I'll see if I can share my screen. Get that on there. And I think this is the right button. Which one do I click on? Just a second. I'm trying to get the full screen version here of. There we go. Okay. So I'm being joined today as well by my partner at R&D. So both of us we've been working in this industry for, as Michael mentioned, over 10 years. So 15 plus years actually. So and right now I'm talking to you from Paraguay, where I've been working in the industry here. My partner as well, she is at the moment in Ecuador. What we do is we've been over the years traveling and assisting companies and countries around the world in implementing cannabis basically in their country. So everywhere we go. So I mean, I've worked in Australia, I've worked throughout South America, Canada. Aaron and I are both from Canada, United States, spoken around the world. And so let me get going, I guess. So Kenya and the cannabis potential. So excuse me. So I'm going to start off first. I'm going to try something a little different to see about having people so that they understand my perspective, I guess, on things. Being Canadian and, you know, having industrial hemp or industrial cannabis legalized in Canada for over 25 years now. We've been using it for quite a while. Now, you know, people use the word hemp, right? But I tend to move away from that word now, and I use basically, for me, there's three industries. You have industrial cannabis, medical cannabis, and recreational cannabis. So I don't use the word hemp pretty much at all. And this is why, okay? I'm gonna ask you, so what is the first thing you think of when you look at a potato? Vodka? I mean, how many people what was that came to mind right away? Was it vodka? Probably not. You know, most people were probably thinking French fries and other things. But if I said to you, and I use the word cannabis, right? What's the first thing that comes to mind? For most people, it's smoking marijuana or smoking a joint, right? Well, I'm here to tell you that it's not the case, right? We've been kind of taught this, but it's not actually the true nature of cannabis. It's not to smoke it as a drug, right? It's really food. For example, 97% of all cannabis grown in Canada is actually for the production of food, grain, okay? And that's if you're measuring it basically volume and acreage, okay? When you compare that to medicinal and the recreational markets that are in Canada. Sure, we've legalized all three of those industries, right? Industrial cannabis, medicinal cannabis, recreational cannabis. Medicinal and industrial were legalized at about the same time in 1998, right? Recreational came online in about 2018. Now, something I mentioned before, I've kind of moved away from the word hemp. Why, right? Well, this is the etymology of the word, right, of cannabis and of in particular hemp. So if you look down here, right at the end, you have English hemp, right? Where does that come from? Well, it came from Old Saxon or German, right? And then you have your Proto-Germanic language, and it goes all the way back to your Indo-European roots. Now, if you look at the word though, cannabis, have a kind of a similar sound. And if you look into, for example, in the Latin language groups, okay, whether it be Italian, Spanish, Portuguese, French, Romanian, right? These are all the words used to represent hemp, right? Or the common language or the common word for cannabis, because their root is actually all cannabis, okay? So, and these are all basically, these are the common words for cannabis, right? And you can see that it goes back very, very old, very long in history, right? Right back to thousands thousands BC, right? This is a very old plant. It's been part of our cultural heritage for a very, very long time. So I'm going to talk quickly about the taxonomy of cannabis. I'm not going to go very deep into this because it can be quite confusing. Well, right now, you have three classifications, right? You have your sativa, indica, ruderalis. In some governmental regulations, they say that industrial hemp, right, is cannabis sativa. Now, that's not really correct. And I'll tell you why, right? And a lot of people seem to think, oh, indica's the drug and sativa's the food one, and ruderalis, well, who really knows? Well, there are some really differences here, but when you look at this classification for taxonomy when they first started, it was really looking at the morphology or the physical characteristics of the plant, how the leaf looked. And you can see here that the leaves are significantly different between one another. And you can't really tell the difference, right, between hemp and cannabis. Why? Because it's the same plant, really. What really differentiates it is its levels of cannabinoids, right? The other thing that's really quite unique, okay, that makes ruderalis stand out from sativa or indica, for example, is that it's an autoflower. So, we've been talking about photoperiod, okay? Well, the ruderalis, okay, doesn't require a photoperiod. It will come to maturity in 90 days, and then that's it. Whereas the other ones, sativa and indica, are kind of fixed on that. All of these as well can all interbreed, and this is why you have varieties. Finola, for example, is a hybrid between cannabis sativa and ruderalis because it's an autoflower, right? And you can combine each of these indica and sativa and other ones. And for example, as well, why I don't necessarily accept the definition that industrial hemp is cannabis sativa is that you have Chinese varieties, okay, that that are indica, are identified as indica, but they're fiber varieties, right? They have low levels of THC, and other levels of CBD. It's the same thing with sativa. You can have high levels of THC. You can also have low levels of THC. There's a three-way split that actually occurs in this plant chemically, right? You'll have it either split high THC, low CBD, high THC, low THC, high CBD, high THC, low CBD, and a 50-50, right? But again, you cannot see that from just visual inspection. So that was just a quick note I wanted to make in regards to this, that, that this plant, right, is one plant, it's cannabis, regardless. And it's simply from breeding and knowing your seeds and varieties that actually allow you to grow what particularly you want. And, you can have medicinal, your medicinal products actually come from an industrial variety. They don't necessarily have to come from the recreational varieties of high THC. They have the low THC. As we know with regulations that are placing out 1%, we have varieties that grow below 1% THC. So next. So as I said, industrial cannabis is really everything, right? And with ABRI, we promote a philosophy called whole plant utilization, where we try to establish and work with companies to really do the whole plant. So, the fiber, the food, the medicine, the flower, all that stuff is all there. This is basically a breakdown of all the different things that you can go. This is just a mind map kind of showing, how the stalk breaks down into different products, how the seed breaks down into different products, the flower, the root, and so on and so forth. So this is the other interesting thing. I want you to take a quick look here. Remember I was talking about how cáñamo, right, which is the Spanish word for hemp, right, is being used today to identify it as the industrial variety. But if you look back, this is actually a mural from Italy taken in Bologna by Aaron when we were visiting Italy. And you'll notice it says cannabis protectio, right? We're not using the word in Italian for cannabis. They're actually using cannabis, right? It says right there. So I'm just going to show you some quick pictures as to the building possibilities that you can actually do with it. So I'm going to go through this very, very quickly. This is just to show the type of buildings that are actually happening, and municipalities now actually doing and embracing basically hemp into buildings. In France, in Europe, for example, right here in the center, right? You see municipal buildings being built with hemp. You have the Adnan's Brewery in your top left corner, which is a brewery in England. You have this building, which is in Belgium, I believe, and then houses that are being built, apartment buildings, just to give you a few ideas as to, what is the potential of actually construction with this. Some of the things that I do, right? And so we talk about, the commercialization and not just the potential of this plant, but what's actually out there. As our colleague from Poland was pointing out, I do things that aren't just in the lab where I work, but also out there. So take a look at the top right corner, for example. That red barn that's up here was painted over 10 years ago, and it's still as red as that is today. And that's a hemp oil-based paint, right? And that was actually, I've taken expired food-grade hemp oil and then created paint with it. And when I went to the trade shows, when I first was commercializing this product at the trade shows, I'd mix up paint and I'd be at my table and I'd take my finger and I'd dip it into my paint and I go, I challenge any other paint producer to do this. And then I taste it. Why? Because it's just expired food grade hemp oil with natural earth pigments. That's what gives it the red. That's the iron oxide. In the center, near the top here, you're going to see a light accent plate, so a light switch plate, right? That is what really is pure hemp plastic. There's no other binder in there. That is just pure hemp, the different constituents of the plant that I've used to actually make that plate. So there are a lot of products on the market today that are called hemp plastic. When you actually look at it, it's a composite type of material. They're going to take something like PLA, which is a great eco-friendly plastic material, and then they're taking the hurd, or the fiber, and mixing it in with the plastic, and then extruding something that has that. But usually, there's only about 10%, 15% of the fiber within that plastic. This here is pure hemp. So even the products like hemp wood, for example, okay, they are using soy binders, great binders, great environmental binders, but they're not pure hemp. They're using the fiber and they're taking a glue and they stick it together, right? This, however, has no other binder in it. This is just different parts of the plant that I've used and created this plate, right? Another example of pure hemp plastic is this here down at the bottom. Kind of looks like cellophane or saran wrap or something like that. This here is just a combination of the fiber and the oil. So that right there, right, is pure hemp. Nothing else in that. Oil absorbents like that, like I have up here, that's the use of some of the waste that we can actually do. I will create a special process, 25 times more absorbent than cat litter. Done a number of experiments on that. Down at the bottom, one of our colleagues was also mentioning, talking about textiles and using hydrogen peroxide. Well, this is a cottonization process that I developed, to create this cotton-like hemp. This is hemp right here, and it can be used for textile. Here on the bottom right is what I call carbon foam, a type of carbon foam, hemp foam, where I was experimenting with, these materials. I took some of the activated carbon that I produced from the hemp, combined it with some of my mineral binders, and when I added the water, there was a reaction that occurred, and it bubbled up, foam, and then became solid. I see this as a very good type of substitute, replacement, whatever you want to call it, or an alternative, right, to your hempcretes or your wools or other things. It has properties that are similar to styrofoam, but not quite. It doesn't burn. There's all kinds of really neat things about it. It's very lightweight. It's not as light as styrofoam, but it has some very similar kind of properties when it comes to insulation because of the microporous nature and all the bubbles of space that's in there that actually creates that insulation. Then right in the middle, I have, this is a conductive, it's conductive hemp paper, basically. So I've taken the carbon and the cellulose from hemp, right, and then created a conductive paper. Now that leads me then to this. So one thing that I actually developed and worked on a while back is conductive biocrete. So you can see probably just up at the top here, my voltmeter is reading 1.03 volts, right? So one day I was combining, this little piece that you see at the bottom, the kind of gray colored thing, and it has the red meter part. This here is just a combination of your lime, okay, so basic hydrated lime with biochar. When I combined them together, and I was just doing some experiments, and I found, oh, this has some conductive properties, very interesting. So I decided to make a battery, right? So I took this, I put down a piece of basically toilet paper, piece of tin foil, put a little salt water down, and then I got a 1.03 reading. The amps aren't very much, but that got me to thinking, can I store energy in my wall, my hempcrete wall, for example? Would that be possible? If I had solar panels on my roof, could I charge my wall and use my wall to store that energy that I can then use later on in my house? And that led to this concept, building integrated energy storage, right? So this brick, hempcrete brick that you see right down here. Now the binder is actually not mine, it's a magnesium oxide binder. Now this brick is actually a battery and it's charging that tablet. So that's where I went from. So it's about 5 volts, 5 amps. Now, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this, but I want people to think about, this idea, this concept, right? Where you store energy on the outside of your building, and then you'd be able to use that in your building. Now, imagine if you look at a building and start counting all the bricks on the outside of that building. Say you count 1,000 bricks. How many volts is that? How many amps is that you could actually store, and how many watts? It's a huge number. I mean, 1,000 bricks at, each brick being 5 volts, that's 5,000 volts. Now you might think, oh my God, I'll get electrocuted. No, the beautiful thing about using some of these binders are that it acts as a Faraday cage. So it doesn't actually leak any energy out. So you walk up to it, touch it, and you're not going to get electrocuted. So I'm not going to spend time on that. This is a topic for another conversation. I'm going to get into this. So we've actually talked about the proteins, and the importance of the protein. Now, we didn't actually talk about the type of protein, right, that hemp is, and that's Ediston protein. And this is where my partner, Erin, this is where her focus a lot on is that botanical side of things. I'm more the biomass, she's botanical. Now, I grew up with saying, right, something similar to let thy food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. That was Hippocrates back in 400 BC or something like that. Now, when I was growing up as well, my mom used to say, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. And that's where I'm going to kind of build on this now. So these proteins, what makes them so important, so different as well than other proteins, say soy protein or bean protein or another one, right, is Ediston, right? So Ediston and DNA, that Ediston protein, right, plays a major factor in DNA repair, right? That is something, our bodies actually require, right? That we have a nice homeostasis within our body, that we're able to fix things regularly. And it's our food that actually does this, and now it's very, very compatible, right, with our body, right? And that's what makes it so important. Like soy, you cannot just walk into a field of soy and eat raw soy. You're going to get sick, right? Whereas with hemp, you can do exactly that. Raw hemp is actually very, very good in the way of seed. What else does it do? Oh, well, look at that with antibodies, right? Helps to produce proper antibodies. Now, during COVID, we know that was, there's lots of talk about antibodies and everything else, and, people are getting sick and everything else. And it's likely because of our diets, right? We're not actually supplementing our diets properly, right, in what we should be actually doing. So again, with the Ediston protein, being so similar to what our bodies use it and need it, it helps regulate, the hormones, hemoglobin, enzymes, and the production of antibodies, right, which is very, very important. So this here is really kind of interesting to demonstrate as well that it's been part of our consciousness, if you want, for such a very long time. And, again, cannabis, when you say the word cannabis, people think, oh, it's marijuana. But in actuality, okay, it's a food, right? This is so important as a food, right? And it should be part of our diets every day, right? So pseudo tribal women in South Africa, right, actually, grind up the hemp seeds with porridge and bread to help wean their children, right, from breastfeeding. So, and actually, the only time that a human actually produces cannabinoids is during pregnancy. A woman will actually supply, right, these cannabinoids in the breast milk to feed the child. That's how important, I mean, our cannabinoids are to humans. So what does that mean? Well, I'm a very big proponent of raw cannabis, right? Don't see it yet on our grocery shelves or anything else, but I'm one of those people that I hope one day I can walk into a supermarket, I can walk over to where the lettuce is, and right beside it, there's cannabis. Why? Because it is such an essential part, right, of the things we need to eat, right? It has all these compounds. The hemp plant can provide everything, just about everything you need, right, to eat. And those phytocannabinoids, right, are so super important. I'll tell you why when it's taken in raw form. So Erin as well, this is one of her gardens. So you can see down in the bottom right, she grows her cannabis right alongside her other vegetables and everything else. And then she turns that into all kinds of beautiful, tasty things, from hummus to pesto to tomato sauces to whatever, all kinds of things that you can actually do with this plant, whether it's the seed or the flower, cannabis, those terpenes, flavors. There's so many things there, and that's why it's so important. So cannabis and COVID. So I was talking about this before, in regards to antibodies and our health. So University of Lethbridge in Alberta, right, was using some of these cultivars and said, it could help with combating COVID and what they were finding in the lab. The studies focused on how certain cannabis extracts affected ACE2, right, and these other proteins, right? Now, certain cannabis extracts. So this is where I'll go next. So here, University of Oregon, right? So which ones were they finding? It's the CBDA, not CBD, right? Not THC. They're not decarboxylated. They haven't gone through that process of going, we add heat to the product, to the CBDA, converts over to CBD, and then using this. CBDA, you can only get basically from the raw plant, okay? So, or when in extraction, you're not heating the extract to produce just CBD, right? Your CBDA, the CBDA in that plant, right, is what is bound to the coronavirus spoke protein, and it stops basic replication. So this is, I think, some very important information for people to have and to understand, right, that cannabis, and THCA is non-psychoactive. So if you have a raw plant that's sitting in that field and you're eating the raw, okay, uncooked flower, okay, your body can actually now have access, all right, to those natural compounds. Some will convert in your body. There's heat in your stomach and there's acids, these sort of things that will actually do some of the conversion, but your body will control that. And if you're not eating a whole ton of it, you're not going to get high. But now your body, though, will have access to many of those compounds that it requires to feed the endocannabinoid system that you have in your body, right? And to achieve homeostasis, and then to combat the viruses and the things. And I think eventually we'll find out too that it's not just that COVID that this actually helps with. There's probably many influenzas, Zika virus, maybe malaria. I don't know. I think there's a lot of research potential for development of these products. We have to go and buy it at a pharmacy. If we're taking this daily in our diet, then it's a preventative type of medicine, right? I think that's one of the most important things I think you'd like to see about taking away from this, is understanding that cannabis, right, is not just necessarily medicine or drugs for recreation, okay? Yes, it can be, but it's one very, very small part. Cannabis is everything else. It's that fiber, it's that for building, it's for food. And it's been part of our culture, as eating it much longer, right, than all these other things. So with that, I draw to an end, and I will stop sharing just a second. Okay. So if there are any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer. And, these are some of the things that I do, and work with companies and countries around the world to assist in development of these products, food, fiber, medicine, and yeah.
Thank you so much for that, Carl. I don't know if there is anybody from among the participants who has a question or clarification they may want.
Hi, I'm Erin. I'm the other half of ABRI, Advanced Botanical. I'm the botanical part. I just wanted to point out that one of the most important things I think that hemp gives us is the fact that, we talk about feeding people, we talk about famines. Well, what about feeding people right? Hemp will grow the mass amount of quality protein and quality nutrition that we need to not just deal with hunger, but also, deal with health in a way that we can get better. Our food is actually going to build us up. And this is one thing that I think is so important that we lost with hemp. I mean, when Christopher Columbus sailed across, the ocean, he brought hemp seeds with him in order to make sure that his sailors would survive. This is something that it's an essential nutrient. It's something that we need. And thanks, Carl.
Thanks, Sarah.
Can I go on?
Does anyone else have a question for Dr. Karl Matee?
Yes. Can I go on?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, I just wanted
Dr. Karl,
maybe.
perhaps I may there is a question which had been raised when Inigo from Gensco Malawi was presenting. There was a certain question which had been posted. We didn't have time to read it, but if I may go through it, the question was, are there challenges in regulating the local consumption which can lead to misuse, resulting in mental problems in the society in Malawi? So I think whoever asked the question did not quite have the understanding between the industrial cannabis, which we are calling hemp, and what is the marijuana, the recreational, which is people normally tend to associate with the misuse, abuse, and maybe leading to mental problems. So the question was, are there any challenges in regulating in the local consumption which can lead to misuse resulting to mental problems in the society? Yeah.
I think the biggest challenge is education, right? I think education is most important. I mean, for a very long time, we've heard the propaganda, to denigrate cannabis and to put it down, not knowing, and people only thinking that it's a drug. And I think, when it comes to regulating, yes, the drug part should be kind of regulated, so that, it's not getting into the hands of minors or anything else. But then somebody will come up and say, well, Carl, you said that we should have cannabis on the food shelves. What if the 12-year-old runs in and buys a bunch of cannabis and runs home? Well, that is possible, but he could do the same thing with potatoes. He could run into the supermarket, grab up all the potatoes, run home, put it through a still, and make vodka. Why is he not doing that? Probably because through education, that we teach people to say, and say, potato, what we use it for? Okay, yeah, I can use it for vodka, but we make potato chips out of it, French fries, and everything else, right? It's the same thing with rice and sake. You can run in the store, buy some rice, but you're not running home to make sake with it. Same with rye whiskey. It's through education, right? And so that, and I think, in Canada, for example, after 25 years, and the society was, I guess, maybe mature enough that when it was legalized, it didn't end up, there was always this fear that, oh my God, if we legalize, everybody's going to run out, get stoned, and we're not going to be productive. That's not what happened. I mean, we've seen that time and again, whether that be Holland or British Columbia or Canada or many other places, you know, that this doesn't happen. It is through educating our youth, our generations, and the people, right, that will actually help to regulate this, so we don't have a lot of those major problems with and health issues. So.
I saw the question there about how did Canadians get over the stigma. One of the most interesting things is about Canada and our hemp regulations that we've had in place for 20 years is the focus became food. We learned over time that hemp was food. And so these countries that are starting out, I mean, you know, there's been CBD and the 2018 Farm Bill kind of exploded that. If we forget about that side, which is a very, very tiny side of hemp, and we look at the food, that's how, you know, the largest cannabis company in the world is Manitoba Harvest, and they make hemp hearts and hemp oil. You know, so focus on the food, focus on changing people's minds. I was one of the first retailers in Canada of hemp protein. And I remember this old Ukrainian man would walk into my store and he was so excited that he saw hemp because he remembered it when he was a kid, you know, and they grew it and they ground it and they used it as a food. So it's changing that idea around what we think of hemp. We need to think of it as a food.
How's that, Michael?
For that, and Carl for clarifying that point, that education is one of the most important things that we can do. The more we educate ourselves, we can be able to take advantage and be able to come across various products that we can make from the industrial hemp. Thank you for your presentation once again. We have less than 1 minute, but we had one last speaker.
I'm not sure Michael can hear these because you interrupted somebody who had a question there.
The founder of Utopia Plastics. They're making plastic materials, knives, straws, plates, all sorts of plastic material from industrial hemp. So I'll kindly request us to allow us to end the meeting so that we can now rejoin for the final speaker, who will give us her insight and how it's working out in the United States. Thank you. Welcome, Sharina Perry. It's glad to see that you're doing great works in the United States. I managed to go through your company and what you're involved in, and we will really appreciate to get your insights on the benefits of industrial hemp in the making of plastic materials and how the same can be implemented here and the potential avenues of, let's say, like partnerships and so on. The floor is yours.
Very good. Thank you, Michael, for inviting me. And I also have a PowerPoint presentation that I will share. To the group, thank you all for your time. It's morning here, almost 9 a.m. in the US, in central US. And so thank you from around the world. My name is Sharina Perry. I'm the founder and inventor of Utopia Plastics. Utopia Plastics is a plant-based alternative to your traditional fossil fuel polymers. I will say that my journey as regards the study of plant material began when my nephew was diagnosed with neurofibromatosis 2, which is an incurable growth of tumors. And seeing as there is no cure, my studies began as 19 years old. I watched his quality of life change. My sister when my nephew was in surgery, essentially said, Sharina, you have to do something. And my studies took me to cannabis. And I will tell you all that I share this often, that education turned my ignorance into advocacy, because I understood the benefit of cannabis on a larger scope and scale. So what I'll do is now move into, I then developed a health and wellness line. The health and wellness line, understanding that regulation around hemp, even though we had 2014, then 2018, the passage of the Farm Bill, there were still pretty significant regulations in the US that would limit its insertion into the market in a way that it could be broad. I began to look at understanding that these crops, and it would be a broad variety of crops, not only hemp, it would be flax, jute, canaf as well. These crops could be used as an alternative to petroleum, cotton, and wood. The USDA had done feasibility studies on these. However, we were not seeing a broad insertion. As it was mentioned by one of the panelists earlier, yes, these crops had been used for industrial applications in the space of polymers by automobile companies in a composite material with a low insertion. However, we had not seen them in blown film, in thermoforming. We had not seen them with high plant loads. So when this issue of sustainability, and give me a moment and I will share my screen. I won't go all the way in because some of you all fully, absolutely understand sustainability. So I'll move to these slides fairly quickly. We wanted to really focus on education as the element. What was sustainability? The business of how we think about our natural resources, and how and why we built a sustainable ecosystem business model called Utopia. That in the US, around the world, sustainability is the environment, our society, and our economy. In the US, 3 Ps were adopted: people, planet, and profit. We have traditionally had, as you all are aware, when we're looking at our natural resources, this very linear approach to our economy, where we take our natural resources, we make products, and then we dispose of them. But as it was also mentioned earlier, as regards Europe, they're essentially not interested in degradables. They are highly interested in taking these products and being able to reuse them. So more of a cradle to cradle approach. And so where we make products, we use them, and then we figure out as well how to reinsert them. The idea, use a specific product for as long as possible, extract as much as possible from the product or asset as possible, and then reuse that product or component or material to produce new things. Again, taking our natural resources, using them in manufacturing, consume and use them, waste, but then how do we use them again? This is where these crops that we are essentially talking about are very vital in a cradle to cradle approach, especially when we're talking about sustainability, because they really focus on what happens from the very beginning of what we use in our materials. If we're using crops that add benefit to the environment, that remove heavy metals from the soil, that add nutrients in the soil, that allow to reduce carbon emissions, this is where we start the source. So when we were developing Utopia, we were centrally focused on some of these key questions, and they remained at our forefront. Our whole focus, we do not solve problems. We do not create problems as we solve them. And how could we make a global impact? How do we keep employees and manufacturers in jobs? Because even if this global thing, especially like I've been to Kenya, I've been to Nairobi, I've been to Kisumu, Kisumu, I've observed the waste issues there. And if we continue to create this waste and we're not really looking at these single-use plastics on the impact, single-use plastics is one of the largest global industries as far as uses. So we then put people out of jobs. So we have to reimagine how we use our natural resources. How do we avoid having manufacturers spend large amounts of money modifying their equipment? How do we reduce carbon? How do we save marine life? How do we save the trees? How do we make consumers conscious, but not totally change consumer habits? How do we use our most valuable resource, our land? How do we keep minority and disadvantaged farmers and landowners in the equation to overcome some of the disparities and inequity that has existed? How do we help the economy and local communities? And how do we use my vision of utopia to create a sustainable ecosystem? What you will see in the corner there, how I began this journey, I actually was sitting in a local restaurant and I had a paper straw. And it was at that point that I realized my vision and experience and education had come together to equate to essentially a purpose. And it's to reimagine as we choose to do things God's way, that we take our natural resources and we use them in a good stewardship way. And so what I did was take my knowledge of the study of plant matter, and I determined that I was going to make a plant-based straw in my kitchen. Much to my surprise, what I uncovered then was, one, the straw that I had created did not break down in cold liquid. I also, in looking at if I was going to coat this straw, I needed to make sure that it was healthy coating. So I used a beeswax and I also used a paraffin. Once I realized it didn't break down in cold liquid, I then took it over to my pot of beeswax and it did not break down in 340 degrees. That helped me understand the vast properties that existed in the barrier properties of the plant. What you see in the corner is a fast forward of what occurred. I then, after making my straw, I've been an entrepreneur for over 25 years. I then began to look at how do we insert this into market where it becomes economical. In the US, and it's been mentioned on this symposium as well, the CBD market had driven up cost of seed, making it almost unrealistic to insert hemp. Also, because hemp in the CBD space had become almost the forerunner, the FDA was challenged with how do we basically, as they indicated to me, tell a mother of a 5-month-old that all the THC and the cannabinoid profiles had been removed from using it in this type of application. So what you see in the photo in the corner is actually the largest global producer of paper straws. I reached out to them. I had paper made with hemp and sent to them and asked them to do the testing. The paper that I sent, I had already examined what 100% hemp looked like. So what I did then was send them paper with 25% composition and 50%. My goal was to determine at what point using these combined composite materials could alter the traditional properties of the products, and testing proved it. We then developed, essentially, if we were going to get into market, and as I had researched and analyzed, what I had found is the market had no feasible supply chain that could allow all of it to work together. So we developed what we called our Utopia model that included farming, processing, manufacturing, and distribution. And it was a way of developing our own supply chain. We would then engage farmers, processors, manufacturers, and distributors to become a solution in the space, not reinventing it, but just reimagining what resources we would use. In the farming element, we created Eden Grow. The goal was farming, and then the environmental benefits of the crops that we use. I apologize, I'll go back. Of course, as it's been observed in this conversation, is the amount of CO2 absorbed from the atmosphere, 30 to 40 tons in a growth cycle per hectare. During a single growing cycle, the amount is the same exhaust as 20 cars in a whole year. There's no chemical pest control needed. Neither toxic nor synthetic products are applied during the growing cycle. The crops remove toxic elements such as heavy metals, and the industrial products made with Utopia plastics can be recycled as well. And it's a very important aspect for the automotive and the construction industry. These can also be used as a soil remediator, as they are often used as a cover crop. What you see here is Utopia Solutions. Essentially, this is the processing and manufacturing of our resin. This particular facility is in Kentucky. We actually hired this company to come in and make the pulp originally when we were making the straws. And in 2020, we moved forward with the acquisition of the assets. And the reason is we were centrally focused on states that had a better understanding of industrial uses of these crops. What you have is Mitch McConnell in the center, who was integral in the passage of the 2018 Farm Bill that legalized hemp. And I will tell you, in the US, and why we see so many delays in the use of hemp is a cost greatly associated with seed. There are many other crops in the family that have greater yields, stronger core, that are not driven up by these markets, that the demand in the market can almost price you out of this type of application. What you see here are different types of our Utopia plastics resin. We actually do not make finished products. We hire at times manufacturers to make finished products, but we are a resin provider. I am the only African-American woman in the world in the space of compounded pelletized resins. Manufacturers do not need to in any way modify their equipment when they're using our resins. What you see in the upper left corner is a resin that has been recycled 4 different times and repelletized, 100% recyclable. What you see in the upper left corner, again, our goal was to be a solution. So we did develop a composite material that could be combined with traditional fossil fuel polymers to make them eco-friendly. Essentially, our technology will take your non-traditional recyclable, a material that is not recyclable. It will turn it 100% recyclable, naturally compostable, and also degradable in certain applications. In the lower left-hand side is our alternative to polypropylene 2 to 4 melt. In your lower right-hand side is our alternative to polyethylene 1 to 2 melt, traditionally used in linear low density, as a linear low density application. What you see here is the portion that handles the sales and distribution, our Utopia Genetics. What you see is a photo of me where straws were made. These are all proof that our materials could be used in these different applications. So extrusion with a thin wall, blown film to create bags, also injection molding, thermal forming. We also have where the cutlery that was made, these were simply proofs of applications. In early 2020, in February, we sent our resin to manufacturers across the country and simply asked them to use them in their existing processes and then to give us the feedback. We were intentional to use manufacturers that had seasoned 30+ years in manufacturing because they would understand uses of different materials. What we also see in the lower right corner is a solution that one of our universities was challenged with coming up with a sustainable solution for a wrap. And so they were able to do it working with one of our our Oklahoma representatives in developing it. Fast forward, we've seen vast manufacturers across the globe have used Utopia wrap plastics resins in different applications. From the photos here, you'll see actually our material used in a manufacturing facility for blown film. You'll see also, we did some comparisons of what it traditionally looks like as your plastics resins, then Utopia plastics compared side by side. One of the largest global manufacturers who provides to some of the major food chains. What you see is a photo of me in the facility as they used it to package their meats. In the photo where you see me pointing as we move over from, I'm moving over actually from left to right, that earlier this year, in the largest houseware show, global manufacturer introduced Utopia Plastics as their sustainable solution, and they are a maker of containers. You'll also see trash cans used there with Utopia Plastics. I want to point out what really was pretty amazing when the manufacturer used Utopia Plastics in making the trash can. They typically run at 510 degrees using a linear low density polyethylene 20 melt. They were able to use our material at 360 degrees, so considerably lower. They received a greater yield and they had a no chemical smell. One thing that many manufacturers talk about in the production of Utopia Plastics, it smells in their manufacturing facilities that they're making cake. It is a very sweet smell, no chemical smell as well. I don't get there alone in doing this. Our team is made up of individuals with vast backgrounds, from the space of oil and gas to process, fire protection, safety, for human resources, to marketing, branding, to national sales, to franchisee owners, to investment, to engineers, chemists, attorneys, longtime seasoned entrepreneurs. That is our team Utopia. That is a diverse group of individuals who have come together with an intentional focus on the doing of good. You will often hear me say, we are better together, if you follow me on any of my LinkedIn or social platforms. And as we continue to do this, we've worked with, I'm now working with different countries. I will be participating in the Global Virtual Plastics and Papers Recycling Conference from the Czech Republic. We have been instrumental in this education element of it, in understanding markets that we have in Africa, in Europe, patents as well across the globe. I continue to hear people develop IP around even hemp. However, that is covered in our patent. Prior to our discovery, there was no use, there was no scientific knowledge of using hemp or some of these other crops, flax, jute, kadaf, for a high plant load in the creation of a polymer without modifying equipment significantly. We developed that IP and own those patents, and we're able to file for PCT patents under the protection. So we encourage everyone to do research to find that they're not, in fact, going into areas that have already been developed. And we are pleased to say in February, we were featured on Bloomberg on a global platform as a solution to plastic waste. Also, we've been able to receive various awards as far as environmental excellence and being a leader in this space. Thank you again, Michael, for allowing me to join the conference today or the symposium, and I am definitely open to any questions.
Thank you so much, Sharina, for your presentation. There is one question from the chat directed at you. The question is, are the products which you're making 100% biodegradable?
Yes, our products are degradable. However, I want to draw to you too that resins are degradable, and we avoid some of the things that people want to conclude with it. Biodegradation can happen with products across a large landscape. Everything will essentially at some point break down. It's what's left behind when it breaks down. It's going to be very different when we're talking about an automobile part as opposed to a blown film. So degradation time is highly linked to the end product. We've had film degradation within 120 days. But when our products break down, the key is the product that is used, the plants that are used. When that breaks down, nutrients will then be again added back into the soil for the environmental impact of it. So we kind of say it's often you don't hear of plastics, and we use the term X, in all of these spaces where they're actually recyclable and degradable. That's not often used, but we do use it in the space of papers or plants where they can be recycled. But as you're recycling our material, it is breaking down every time that is recycled. So it does need a reinsertion of materials into it to maintain, to keep that form. And we feel like that is a huge environmental benefit, that you could have a broad landscape of how you're able to use the materials.
Thank you so much for that presentation. Does anyone in the attendance have any question for Sharina Perry?
Yes, our products I see in the chat. Yes, our products are compostable. So when we're talking resin. So I will give you in April 2021, April 28th, there was a group of urban farmers that they use a regenerative or a restorative process for agriculture. What we did was provide for them some film. They planted using our film in hoop houses. What they found as a result of using our film, they received 4 times the yield. They had no pest. They had moisture soil. But fast forward into late August, early September, they had such significant degradation in the film, in spite of it being in hoop houses, they simply chose to till it back into the soil. And since you're using these cover crops or these type of crops in creating our polymers, they are a healthy nutrient for the soil. So it was no issue. Then they could use the recover again as well. That degradation time would be significantly faster had they been exposed directly to the elements. And that at that time, they used a 1.7 mil thickness film as their layer.
Thank you for that. I don't think there's any other question. I would like to thank everyone who attended, more so those who are able to make their presentation in terms of explaining to people the differences between the industrial cannabis, which is known as hemp, and the recreational, which is commonly referred to as marijuana. I think we have come to the close, but before we finish, I'd like to, for our Kenyan viewers, I'd like to discuss, or rather explain about the legal mechanism in our country, because some people asked rather, how is it that our company, Green Corporation, we were able to be given a research license for industrial hemp? So where we've pointed our focus towards is in the Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Control Act of 1994. If you read section 3.1 of that act, which is available online, you can just look for it and go through it. You'll notice that any person, section 3.1 states that any person who has in his possession any narcotic drug or psychotropic substance shall be guilty of an offense. It goes ahead in section 3.3 to state that subsection 1 shall not apply to a person who has the possession of a narcotic drug, in this case such as cannabis, under a license issued pursuant to section 16, permitting him to have possession of the narcotic drug. So if you go to section 16, you will notice that there is a board which is supposed to be established, whose purpose is to issue licenses for importation, exportation, manufacturing, production, and so on. But it's not clear which board exactly that is that carries out that duty. So based on our research undertaking, we wrote to the Office of the Honorable Attorney General, and we received communication back that indeed that board that is mandated to issue licenses for cannabis, industrial hemp, for medical, scientific research or commercial purposes is the Pharmacy and Poisons Board. So that is the responsible agency for issuing licenses in this country for anyone who wants to now go ahead and perhaps grow it and produce. For us, we obtained our research license from NACOSTI, but we haven't been able to achieve much because we haven't yet gotten clearance from the Pharmacy and Poisons Board. So I think that is one thing which should be looked at, and it's good if we are able to educate our people to start asking the important questions. If the agency mandated to give the licenses is already carrying out the functions, why is it that they're not giving out licenses to those who apply for them? This is in answer to Mr. Sinonin. I see he had asked me about the regulatory space in Kenya. I think that answers your question in terms of who exactly is supposed to issue which licenses. And this is in accordance with the advice which I received from the Honorable Attorney General. And with those few remarks, I'd like to thank everyone once again. Unless anybody has any question, I think we should have come to the end of the symposium.
Michael, maybe a quick one. Are you aware if there are other organizations in the country who have been licensed, or you're the first one to apply?
Unofficially, the people say there are other companies, but when you follow the proper mechanism and the channels, which I have done, you'll find out, for instance, when you write to the Kenya Plant Health Inspectorate Service to be given a plant import permit, they will tell you that it has not been issued to anybody else. So if there's any other company which is doing it currently, they got their seeds without passing through KEFIS, for example. So for us, for example, we wrote to KEFIS and we got their response from the Kenya Plant Health Inspectorate Service, and they asked us to write to the Pharmacy and Poisons Board, who are the mandated agency responsible for issuing such licenses. So I see in the comment that there are some people who have the permits, but my position will be those guys, I don't know how they got their permits, or rather how they were able to import their seeds. But if they didn't get the plant import permit from KEFIS, which allows you to import certified industrial hemp seeds, maybe they found another way around it. But for me, we are the first company to do it. And perhaps there are others which are on the way to make that application.
Well, I also have a question. Can I go on? Hello?
Yes, you can go on.
I'm asking that, can we maybe have in place some actions, or rather a team that can be able to push on this issue of hemp, so that of course it can now be legalized in Kenya? Because I just know of a certain presidential candidate who is trying to push for it. But what about the private sector also pushing it, covering all the aspects, like educating the public, going to the government and telling them that, of course, educate them further. Can such actions and a team be formed, or that's the question?
Thank you so much for your question. Actually, I am aware of the presidential candidate who is really insisting that we have to move towards industrial hemp and cannabis as a means of reviving our economy. I'd say for industrial hemp, it's not per se, it's not something that needs to be legalized per se, because it's already legal, only that it's regulated. Because you see, the Act talks of, if you have a license issued by the Pharmacy and Poisons Board, you can go ahead and do your production and manufacturing and so on. So it's not 100% illegal that it has to be legalized, it's only regulated. And on your question on the private sector, I don't know how that will be done, but I think it's a really important method of, because they are able to reach a wide number of people, and they have a lot of influence with our government agencies. I think it's one avenue which can be explored. And I see in the comment, there's somebody asking about the Hemp Farmers Cooperative. Yes, actually, I am the Secretary General of the Industrial Hemp Farmers Cooperative Society of Kenya. We formed this this year. It was registered in February, and it brings different farmers who are interested in growing this industrial hemp, various manufacturers, people from various sectors of the economy who are interested in using industrial hemp in their products or being farmers. So we came together into one organization, and we are just beginning our works, and we are ready to partner with as many individuals, both locally and regionally, as is possible. If there is any question, we are left with 3 minutes for the end of our Zoom session.
When you talk about the legalization aspect, are you referring to the recreational cannabis or hemp, or you are talking about the recreational one cannabis, or you're talking about the industrial one? Because you have talked about it's not 100% legal, like you need some authorization.
Yes, when I talked about that it's not 100% illegal, I was talking about the industrial hemp. The recreational, absolutely. If that's the one which will need to be passed in terms of legislation that focuses on decriminalizing the use. The key word here is decriminalization. But when I say that it's not 100% illegal, I am talking about the industrial hemp. Because if anybody goes to the Pharmacy and Poisons Board and applies for a manufacturing license and they are issued with it, they can go ahead and now get the plant import permit from KEFIS, and they can grow in as maybe 10 acres, 20 acres, as much as they want. There's no special legislation which has to be passed. It's already been put in place. It's only that the agency mandated to grant those licenses ought to act. If there is anyone who has applied, it ought to be given due consideration and they are granted the licenses.
Thank you. So just two things. Number one is that when you talked about the association, I think that maybe you need to maybe bring all of us into that association for the hemp so that we can put our forces together, because I've been engaging also. We have Sharina here who was just presented. I've really been engaging her, and even she has been to Kenya, we've met, and I think she can also be instrumental plus all other people so that we can be able to put our hands together and see how can we execute this. Of course, I'm Lialo Milicia, and that is all.
Thank you so much for your comments, Mr. Liala Omulisia. I think we are left with less than a minute, so I think we'll have to come to an end. If anybody has any questions, perhaps you may reach us through my Twitter handle, which is @777hempara, @777 capital HEMPEROR. I have put the same in the comments. So until next time, I thank you all for being in attendance.